Welcome back into Extra. Now, if you've been watching Good Day for many years, you know we do a lot of interviews here and all different facets, people from different facets of life.
And with the recent passing of one of the most celebrated interviewers ever, Phil Donahue, we thought we'd talk about that. Our next guest says he has some questions for us, Michael.
Uh-oh.
Welcome in this morning.
Yeah, baby, that's what I'm talking about.
I mean, you doing radio forever, obviously did a lot of interviews, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've done thousands of interviews, and I'm sitting there trying to think about all the years of expertise we have between the three of us. But I mean, Phil Donahue really kind of set a new standard, right, of interview. He was the guy that went into the audience with the microphone. Then Jerry Springer, of course, passed away in April of last year.
That was a little different kind of show, though.
It was.
Yeah.
Well, originally it wasn't.
Originally it wasn't.
But it kind of grew into that. But I'm thinking about the Mike Douglases, number of Griffins, the Sally Jesse Raphaels, the Ricky Lakes.
Yeah.
I mean, there have been like hundreds and hundreds. So I kind of want to get an idea from you guys, because you've been doing it for so long. Like for example, what's the most uncomfortable interview you've ever done?
The most uncomfortable, and I can't think of the author, but he was a little arrogant, and he's written a lot of books. I don't even want to name him, even if I could remember it. But he was just very cold in the interview, and they offered the satellite interview to us. So you thought he wanted it to sell his book, but he gave very short answers, and I was getting hot all over. You start feeling very nervous. So that's probably my most uncomfortable.
Mike, what about you?
I don't know if it's the most uncomfortable. I think the most negative part of some is, especially when you have a politician or a leader and there's not two sides represented. Well, you have to be that other side.
Yeah.
So when you ask a question to challenge them, it doesn't mean you're necessarily against them. You're trying to balance the interview. So I guess my answer to your question would be is just you wish that people understood that and they didn't try to see it as some sort of a bias.
Something I really try to do, and again, I've been doing it for as long as you guys have been, I always want to come up with questions that I don't think they've ever heard before.
Yes, yeah.
And that's really difficult,
hard.
particularly if you're talking about, and I've seen you have celebrities on here on Good Day all the time, and they may have had 3 or 4 interviews that morning. This may be the 4th of 12 they're doing, and they're sponsoring something. And so I'm always trying to come up with something, because I know you only have a short period of time. I'm trying to do something that's light, it's fluffy, it's fun. I try to find some information about them perhaps no one else knows about to kind of catch them off guard, because half the time I don't think they want to do the interview, and you want them to come back. So how do you prepare for that? How do you prepare for
It's just like you said, you do homework, you go digging. And before there was Google, I remember I had a chance to interview Sugar Ray Leonard, one of the greatest boxers of our generations. And I was able to do some research and find out who his first fight was. And I just wanted to ask him about that. That was your first professional fight. I still remember the name to this day, Bull Vega. So that just softened him up a lot, like really made it more of an engaging interview, just that I would even know who his first professional fight was against.
I did find that too, that celebrities in particular would be kind of standoffish, some of them, but once they realized that you did your homework and you knew what you were, you knew what you were doing, that you weren't just there to be a part of it, then they respected it, and then they opened up a little bit. A lot of them have done
some of the hardest interviews I've ever done, and Bruce Harris is a good friend of mine. I love him at the Comedy Club. They're comedians, because
yes, they can be awkward.
When you're a comedian's going to be on, you expect to laugh, and if they're not asking.
Sometimes they're just doing an interview. They're not doing their show.
They are. Well, it's 7:30 in the morning.
Yeah,
I think what we do. I think what Janice and I do is we usually ask them ahead of time. That's part of the prep.
Set you up. Yeah.
What do you want to talk about? Do you want to just ask you something, get into material? You just want to talk? And there have been a couple who've come on who've been very famous for certain catchphrases from maybe a sitcom who said, I don't want to say that word or that phrase. Don't ask me about it.
Done? He used to know.
No, not that one, but we won't mention, it's fine.
So have you ever had a situation where you had to cut an interview off for whatever reason?
Oh, many times. And it was usually the comedians.
Yeah, if it was going bad, we had to, It's a family show, Tony.
Well, I get that. We had Pauly Shore on once, and I don't know.
He was very difficult.
The second time he was on there, he was awesome.
He was great. First time was difficult.
He went into a story about a hot tub, and I was like, okay, and this is me. And it's,
this is FM radio.
This is morning radio, and I'm like, okay, we can get away with a lot, and we had the dump button and everything else, but you can only dump once in 30 seconds.
We had Judy Tenuta, was a comedian.
Oh my goodness.
That was very famous for a long time. And she was on air, and she was just off the rails. Hilarious, but not for our television.
The late Richard Simmons was on too, right?
Yeah, he was fantastic. But Judy Tenuta, the general manager, literally called down to the newsroom and said, said, get her off television. So our producers over we have this thing we call the God speaker that you talk over, and they said, get her off the set. And we had to get Judy to get off.
I don't want to run out of time before we ask you. You have interviewed a lot of big name rock stars, and who stood out to you?
Probably my most interesting was Jackson Browne. It was right after he had broken up with Daryl Hannah, or after Daryl Hannah had told people that he had domestically abused her, which obviously was not. Yeah, and it was just a really strange situation. But we sat backstage at Oak Mountain Amphitheater, and I had a tape recorder, and I don't remember if I had 10 or 15 minutes, and I flipped the tape over 4 times. Wow. It was a 45-minute tape. We talked for an hour and a half, and they were finally like, Jackson, you need to get up on stage. But it was just remarkable, and I wish I had that interview. But I've got an opportunity to interview. But there's also been people like Jimmy Buffett, God rest his soul, the hardest interview I've ever had.
Really?
Just every time I'm interviewed him 4 times, and every time I get more difficult. And I'm like, come on, dude, come on with me.
Wow.
We need to do this again, reminisce over coffee.
Yeah.
Coffee talk.
Yeah.
Charlton Heston, Jimmy Carter, Charlie Daniels, 3 of my favorites.
Oh, we got to do that.
We got to do a
that.
segment on that. All right, now JJ's got this though.